Senator Coates.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Secretary, welcome, and
thank you.
It's good to see a good former colleague and
yes,
Midwestern bred and born and raised secretary here, and I appreciate your straight talk.
Thank you.
Calling it for what it is. We served together in the House. You know how Congress operates. You're well aware of our current fiscal situation. The reality is that probably we're not going to get to the numbers the administration has proposed. And so I guess the question is, does the department, have you looked at the possibility of a plan B in terms of how you would prioritize the things that are put together in the president's budget? And I would suggest a couple of points here in that regard. We all know that we're focusing exclusively on about 15% of the total budget. As a result of that, the discretionary spending is getting an inordinate amount of focus and attention, and will be subject to a disproportionate share when you look at the whole budget of the cuts that are taking place. Now, a number of people, including me and others, have been increasingly calling for getting the whole pie on the table so that we look at mandatory spending, which, as you know, is 2/3 of the budget. I'm not asking you to answer this particular question, but if you have the opportunity to discuss this at cabinet level or with the president, we can't accomplish this without the president's leadership. There are an increasing number of Democrats and Republicans that are basically saying publicly, look, we can't solve our deficit problem if we don't look at the whole picture. And discretionary spending is just simply going to dry up and go away. You've listed some high priorities here that we all have crumbling roads and bridges. We know this infrastructure, particularly in the East and the Midwest, is old and needs a lot of repair. So I'm hoping, for one, that we're able to look at the larger portion of our spending and take some of the pressure off some of the necessary discretionary spending. So in that regard, as I'm looking at the building for the future, you list 3 specific areas: high-speed rail, America's roads and bridges, and affordable transit operations and options. Could you characterize how you might prioritize those 3 should you get a mark that's significantly below what the budget calls for?
Well, you know, Senator, that DOT has a long history of working with states on building roads and bridges. I mean, that's what we know how to do. That's why we have a state-of-the-art interstate system, thanks to the good people out in the country who know how to build roads, and to our partners in the state who have really been good partners with us in providing the match money, making sure that the contractors are doing what they're supposed to do. So roads and bridges are very important. Transit is very important. I mean, you look at Washington, D.C., if we didn't have the great WMATA system that we have here, the metro system, think about, nobody'd ever be able to get anywhere. I mean, this place would be like a parking lot, and most people think it's a parking lot now. So transit is very important, and highways and bridges are very important. But I want to say this, if we want to do what our predecessors did for us in thinking about the interstate system, then we need to think about, I have 9 grandchildren, I have 4 grown children. 4 of my grandchildren actually live in Indianapolis, Senator, and we need to think about the next generation of transportation, and that's high-speed rail. If we want to get more cars off the road, if we want to be able to do what they've done in Europe and Asia by providing people with good rail transportation, then that's why we need to think about high-speed rail. That's a priority for this administration. It's the President's signature transportation program because it's about the next generation of transportation, the way that our predecessors thought about what the next generation is, and that's why we have an interstate system. Look, we're going to be able to deal with the deficits and the debt and also have a good, strong transportation program of roads, highways, bridges, transit, and high-speed rail. Yeah, those are our priorities.
I would suggest that your statement, we're going to deal with the deficit, debt, and the need for infrastructure and high-speed rail and all this, it seems to me there's a priority there. We've got a huge, we're not going to be able to do number 2 unless we can do number 1. Number 1 is facing us right now, and the budget realities are that we just simply can't do both at the same time. And I think every department is essentially, every agency that has been before us so far, and probably all that is still to come, are going to say this is the top priority. I just yesterday dealt with Homeland Security. It's pretty hard to, you know, they're all making their case, and we're doing it at a time when the limitations on our going into further into deficit and further into debt have put us up against the wall. That's why I suggested looking at the whole pie, including the mandatory spending, as a way of dealing with number 1, but also understanding that at the end of the day, given the realities of the election in November, the makeup of the House of Representatives, the change in public attitude toward what we must do with our debt, it's going to cause all of us, whatever department we're talking about, to have to make some tough decisions and to prioritize some of those. And that really was the essence of my question.
Sure.